Ottawa has appointed a special interlocutor to help try and identify the names of children buried in unmarked graves at former residential schools. Federal officials admit it is a daunting task, but it's one that needs to be done.
We believe you, Canada believes you, and we honor those that are courageously speaking up, some for the first time, and we honor and respect those who continue to suffer in silence to this day. We're also committed as a government to providing ongoing support as communities lead the work to identify, preserve, and protect the final resting places of their loved ones.
Let's bring in the CBC's Janice McGregor from our Parliamentary Bureau, and she was listening in on what was announced today. Janice, Kim Murray is named as the special interlocutor. What does she bring to the job?
Yeah, no stranger to people involved in this file. She is from the Kanesatake Mohawk Nation in Quebec. She is a lawyer by training. She served as Ontario's first Assistant Deputy Attorney General for Aboriginal Justice. She was the Executive Director of the Aboriginal Legal Services of Toronto, argued a lot of prominent cases as a staff lawyer for them. But most important, I think, is to note that she used to be the Executive Director for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So when we are talking about the calls to action, the things the federal government needs to do with respect to missing children and burial sites, she is all too familiar with those calls. Indeed, she would have been helping to develop them. Most recently, she has been working with the Survivors Secretariat at Six Nations the Six Nations of the Grand River, the Mohawk First Nation there, which was home to the Mohawk Institute, the longest running residential school in Canada. It has a huge site there, some 600 acres, and is now conducting a search there to try to get answers about what happened to children at that residential school. There were people in the room today for this announcement. From there, she paid tribute to them, talked about how she would always be there for them, even as she is going on now to this new job, saying that the burden for finding the truth here and sorting out what's going to happen at these burial sites should never have been theirs to carry, and how she was going to focus on making sure, first and foremost, that everything she does in this role is about helping those people, not harming them. This is a role that is independent of government, nonpartisan. Her job is to connect people over her 2-year mandate. She has to come up with an interim report, then a final one, making recommendations for what laws need to change. In bureaucratic jargon, they talk about legal frameworks across jurisdictions, but I thought it was really interesting to hear how she talked about what her mandate was, speaking directly to the survivors in the room. Take a listen.
I am ready to hear about the unique barriers your communities have had and continue to have while doing this sacred work. What colonial laws are standing in your way? Let us discuss how we might dismantle them together.
And she talked about how there might be solutions in Indigenous culture, how the UN's Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People could help guide them as they seek to honor and protect the memories of their children. There was discussion today about how even something like the fact that you have different policing jurisdictions makes this complicated, because there's so much shared responsibility across churches and provinces and territories and maybe even municipalities, Indigenous jurisdictions. Very hard even to think about things like access to sites or preservation of sites down the road if they are seen as crime scene in an investigation, depending on what evidence comes forward. She said what needs to be done might end up looking different in every community. She made it clear that she is in this role to help communities do what they want to do, not to tell them what they should do. Her job just to clear a path, she said. And it's interesting, although she obviously is a lawyer and is trained in legal reasoning, she made a comment at several points about how this is heart work, not head work, when you're dealing with helping survivors.
Janice, there were other Indigenous leaders present today. What did they say this role can do to help?
Yeah, really interesting to hear from the two chiefs present, Rosa Casimir from Tecumloops and Cadmus Delorme from Cowessess First Nation. Obviously, their communities really in the spotlight because of investigations underway there about burial sites. And complicated Casimir spoke eloquently about this, by the fact that when you're talking about, for example, the former Kamloops school, it was not just people from her community, but people from across BC and beyond who attended that. Talking about the role of the interlocutor to bring people together, connect them as they figure out together what should be done, because not all of them agree. Delorme talked about how, this is just the beginning. Investigations at some 35 First Nations now, but there were, I think, 150 schools, something like that, and not all of them having the same experience or the same expertise. A big job to validate this history. Take a listen.
This position of special interlocutor is going to be focused on making sure that every door is open when it comes to research, when it comes to working with where research is, where the documents are, to working with the justice system to see if any justice can truly be served.
And it was interesting to hear him describe kind of the different aspects to this work, some of it involving emotional support for people, obviously, but also what he called technical work, right? Like the radar, work of the searches themselves. He said, even something like who owns the data, software, to own this information about what is ultimately a community's children, how you need help to navigate that maybe and process that and have some consistency across different communities. And then, of course, the issue of records, which just gets you into a huge jurisdictional challenge as well. So a lot of things that have to be connected, but now there is Kim Murray in this role to work on making those connections.
Okay, Janice, thank you. The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Support is available for anyone affected by residential schools. You see the number there on the line. It's a National Indian Residential School Crisis Line and can be reached 24 hours a day. Call 1-866-925-4419.